这个故事如果你听起来不累，那么你的听力水平在生活中是完全够用的。要持续提升英文，记得点击订阅按钮。我们开始吧。
The plane looked fine when it left the ground, but a few seconds later the circle in the sky broke, bent, and turned ugly. The clean loop had gone pear-shaped. Long before the phrase became a joke people said at work or school, it lived in the noisy world of early airplanes. In the 1920s and 1930s, flying was still new and risky. Pilots were learning what a machine in the sky could do. Air shows pulled huge crowds. People stood in fields and looked up for hours just to watch a small plane spin, dive, and climb. The bravest pilots tried tricks that made the crowd gasp. One favorite move was the loop. The pilot pushed the plane up into the sky, climbed higher and higher, then pulled the stick back. The nose rose until the aircraft turned upside down. The plane kept moving in a perfect circle until it came down to the same line where it began. When done right, the shape in the sky looked like a round ring. Clean. Smooth. Beautiful. But early planes were light and rough. Engines coughed. Wings shook. A tiny mistake with speed or balance could twist the circle. Instead of a round loop, the top would stretch and fall. The bottom would sag. The shape stopped looking like a circle. It looked like a pear. Pilots watching from the ground started using a simple line when that happened. "Well, that went pear-shaped." The words spread fast through airfields. Flying schools picked them up. Young trainees heard older pilots say it when a practice move failed. A smooth spin turned into a wobble. A planned landing bounced across the grass. Pear-shaped. The phrase carried a quiet kind of humor. No long speech, no anger. Just a short way to say the plan had slipped off the rails. The rail push came during the Second World War. Thousands of young men learned to fly in a short time. Air bases were loud places filled with engines, tools, and nervous energy. New pilots practiced loops, dives, and sharp turns every day. Training flights did not always go well. One story often told among old pilots takes place on a gray morning at a training field in England. A young flyer had been waiting weeks for his chance to show a clean loop in front of an instructor. The sky was cold and flat. The kind of sky that shows every mistake. He pushed the throttle and the plane climbed hard. The engine roared like a metal animal. On the ground, a few mechanics stopped working and looked up. The aircraft rose higher. The nose tilted back. The loop began. Halfway through the move, something felt wrong. The speed dropped a little too fast. The nose drifted off center. The circle stretched. For a second, the plane hung in the air like it had forgotten how to fly. Down below, the instructor squinted at the sky. The top of the loop sagged. Instead of a smooth ring, the line bulged and narrowed. The aircraft slid through the air in a shape that looked exactly like a pear hanging from a branch. The plane recovered and landed safely. The young pilot climbed out, face tight with worry, waiting for a long lecture. The instructor only shook his head and gave a tired smile. Bit pear-shaped up there. That was all. The line stuck with the trainees. Soon every mistake had the same label. A radio that stopped working during a flight. A landing that bounced too hard. A navigation plan that led the plane miles off course. Pear-shaped. After the war, many pilots returned to normal life. Some became teachers, bus drivers, shop owners, factory workers. They carried their language with them. At work, when a machine jammed or a plan collapsed, someone would shrug and say the old line. It's gone pear-shaped. The phrase slowly walked out of airfields and into daily life. Offices, schools, kitchens, sports fields. A cake that sank in the oven. A road trip that turned into a string of wrong turns. A project that looked perfect on paper but broke apart halfway through. Pear-shaped. The beauty of the phrase lives in its picture. Everyone knows what a pear looks like. Wide at the bottom, thin at the top, a little off balance. The word paints the moment when a neat plan loses its shape. Life does that often. A job interview starts well, then one strange question throws everything off. A careful schedule breaks when a single delay spreads through the whole day. A friendship hits one awkward moment that changes the mood of the room. Round plans turning into pear-shaped days. Old pilots understood something important. When a loop bent out of shape, panic made things worse. The trick was to steady the plane, find the horizon again, and guide the machine back into level flight. Control first. Worry later. That quiet wisdom hides inside the joke. When something goes pear-shaped, the world has not ended. The circle just bent for a moment. The next move still belongs to you. Somewhere years ago, a small plane twisted in the sky and a pilot laughed about the shape it left behind. The line survived because it felt true. Plans wobble. Days tilt sideways. Even the best loop in the sky can lose its perfect circle. The next time your own plan slips and the shape of the day turns strange, remember those early pilots looking up at the sky. They did not shout or blame the wind. They just grinned and said the simplest thing. Well, that went pear-shaped. And then they climbed back into the cockpit and tried again. That habit might help more than you think.
能以非母语者的身份专注学习到现在，这本身就是很棒的进步。真诚感谢你的观看。如果你觉得本期内容实用，点赞或留言让我知道你的想法，这对我持续创作非常重要。我们下期见。